Hey guys, I've been missing playing Maokai a lot, and I know that a lot of you guys have too, and you've been asking me why Maokai isn't good, and a lot of people ask what should Riot do in order to make him playable. So this is my video going to be talking about why I think Maokai is so useless in the meta and no one picks him. He's one of the least popular champs in the game. And especially the higher ranks you go, the less you see him, which is where I play. So I would like to be able to play my favorite champ again. So for Maokai's current issues, his basic abilities are too reliable. So Riot has to make him generally weak everywhere in his kit. But the most important one is his saplings do way too much damage. So he's always been balanced around his sapling damage for the past year, ever since Imperial Mandate came out. He can't clear waves in top lane because of his Q nerfs, or even trade with his enemy lane opponents because he's just so weak in damage in the early game. And his mana costs are so high that even if he tries to trade, he'll lose the trade and then be out of mana while his opponent will probably not. What I want for Maokai is for him to return to being like the prime team fighting peel tank that he used to be in like Season 6. I want him to be mainly played top lane, but if he gets the changes that I'm hoping for, then he would probably be able to be flexed top jungle support because he would just be like a standard tank. I want him to be dealing primarily flat damage. None of this percent max health on sapling thing. I know almost every champ in the game they release these days, they give percent max health to because that's their way of making it so that even if they're weak as fuck, they can still deal damage. And I don't agree with it. I want Maokai to be strong because he's a tank, not because he can kill people that he shouldn't be killing. So we'll go into each ability and what I think the problems are and what I think the fixes should be. So obviously we'll start with his passive. His passive at the moment, he heals a small amount on his auto attack. The cooldown can be reduced by casting or tanking abilities. So the problem I see with this is it's, a very basic passive. He heals after a certain amount of time. The more he's in combat, the more he can heal, essentially, right? But the problems with it is that the heal is too small in the early game, so his laning is actually very weak. And the cooldown is super high because of its reset ability. So the reason that they make the heal small is because you can, reset the cooldown over and over and over. But he can't actually reliably reset the cooldown because he's too squishy to tank abilities to reset the cooldown. And then what's the point? You have to tank abilities to get your heal, right? So then the other one would be casting abilities. But his mana pool in the early game is so low, again, that he can't cast enough abilities to get his passive off. So what I would equate it to is Gragas passive right now. If you have Maokai passive versus Gragas passive, Gragas wins 10 times out of 10. It heals more in the lane phase. It's on a lower cooldown. It's on 8-second CD. Maokai's passive level 1, I think, is on a 30-second cooldown. So you have to cast 4 abilities and then tank 2 more in order for it to be on the same CD as Gragas's. But that Gragas's heals for more anyways. So what's the point? So it's just too weak of a passive. You have a tank named Gragas that has Maokai's passive but more reliable and heals better. It's just sad. Maokai's is better than Gragas's in a team fight in the later game because, the heal will be coming up more often, but Maokai's main problems are his laning. So what I would want is either to make it that the heal is larger, but it has a short, flat cooldown, similar to Gragas's. So instead of being a reset mechanic on his passive, I would just want it to be a flat cooldown that can't be manipulated. That way, you can have it be a stronger heal for the lane phase, but he's not immortal in a team fight because he's proccing it all the time with resets. If they don't want to make it just a flat cooldown, then I think they could take the abilities like style that they currently have, where he will have something like a cast in E, where he has to cast or tank or be around a certain amount of abilities to activate it at all. So it won't just have like a cooldown. He can't just sit in lane, wait, and then proc it. He would have to do something in order to activate it. So that's what I think would be the passive. But again, passive isn't the huge part holding him back. His Q is actually one of my favorite abilities in League. I think it's simple, and it's good that it's simple, right? It does flat magic damage in a line around him. And it knocks close targets away from him, right? Super great. Standard peel tank ability. Love it. But the problems with it is that as a top laner, you need a tool for farming, right? Most top laners can farm the wave from range, especially tanks, right? Gragas can throw a Q. I'm going to be using Gragas as an example a lot here. Gragas can throw a Q from range and farm the wave. Ornn can throw a Q from range and farm the wave. Sejuani can W from range and farm the wave. Sion can Q from range and farm the wave, right? Maokai can Q from range and farm the wave, but his ability is much shorter than the rest, and it does less damage than the rest. So it's actually like the weakest farm tool on a tank that there is, and yet it's his only farm tool. Those other examples I gave you, right? Gragas has E, he can also AoE farm. W can also AoE farm. Not from range, but it's not his only farm tool. Ornn can cast all three abilities and instantly clear the wave. Sion can cast QWE, instantly clear the wave. Sejuani can cast WQ and instantly clear the wave. Like, Maokai's only real farm tool is his Q. His saplings aren't usable as a reliable farm tool because they deal % max health damage, which is really not worth versus minions. It doesn't do a whole lot of damage. And the AoE is small. And you're spending like 100 mana to do 20 damage to creeps. So his main problem is that his Q isn't good at farming the waves. So that's what's holding him back. I think that they could keep this ability in its current state and make it deal bonus damage to minions and monsters, and it would fix problems. Because I don't want Maokai to be this champ that walks up to you in lane, presses Q, clears your whole wave, out trades you, knocks you away, and steals your girlfriend, right? It doesn't need to be crazy. It just needs to be an ability that he can use to farm the wave effectively. But if I wanted to change it and not keep it as the same ability while just adding stats to it, I would change it to an ability that's less guaranteed. A lot of people, when they play versus Maokai, they feel sort of cock-blocked in that this guy has a Q that's such a low cooldown that knocks him away, and oh my gosh, I can't do anything. He just presses Q and I'm knocked away, right? So in order to fix that, they can make it a small flat magic damage in a line, similar to how it is now, but instead of knocking up or knocking back people around him, it slows and then leaves an effect on the ground, something like a Poppy Q, right? And then after a short delay, it explodes and CCs, right? Something like a stun, slow, root, knockup. Doesn't matter. Just some form of CC. And then anyone caught in the explosion will take more damage than the initial cast of the Q, right? This makes it so that the ability can be stronger if they're hit by both ticks, but it's less reliable. So people aren't just, doomed because they're playing versus Maokai they can never engage. Like, when you're versus a Thresh and he has Flay Up, you can't really go on him because he'll just flay you, right? Maokai's Q sort of works the same, but when you have abilities that are guaranteed to work over and over, it makes it so they have to be weaker. So I think making it less guaranteed could put more power into the ability. Next, we'll go to his W. So back in the old days, before he was reworked, his W did % max health damage. So it was an invulnerable, undodgeable dash that rooted and did % max health damage. That was too broken of an ability. But today's W is pretty fucking useless. It's still the same targeted dash. It's guaranteed to hit unless if the target moves across the map, like teleports or something, right? Then it stops chasing. And it does flat magic damage and roots them, right? What's the problem with this ability? It's too reliable of CC, so they can't actually make the ability good because it's too reliable in the cases that it's good. So if Maokai presses W on you, you're guaranteed to get root. You can't, intercept him from out of the sky with a Poppy W or, a Gragas E. You can't do any of that. So that makes it so that if Maokai is a unkillable tank, his CC never misses, which is also a problem. He doesn't have that problem now because he can't get tanky. So what I would want for a fix is, instead of making it a targeted dash that's guaranteed to hit, I would want it to be a directional dash. Something like a Sejuani Q, right? She dashes in a direction, she can go over a wall, it passes through minions, dealing damage to them. And then on the first champ hit, it would root. That's what I would want. Maokai, as it stands, does not have any sort of escape tool, right? Almost every single tank, again, has some sort of escape tool. Gragas has E. Ornn has E. They can jump away, right? They have some way to get out. Again, not all tanks have a way to get out. Something like Cho'Gath doesn't have a dash. Sion does have his ultimate, but, the thing about those champs is they have a way to farm from range, so they don't need an escape. Maokai doesn't. So he either needs a way to farm from range better, or he needs an escape. Those are the two options. So I wouldn't make Maokai's Q a longer range and make his W an escape, right? I would do one or the other. So how I would have it here is he just dashes in a direction, and if he hits someone, he roots them. Or it could be an AoE root. If the root's not guaranteed to hit, you can make the root stronger. And make it deal damage to minions while he passes through. If you do that with a flat damage W roots minions he passes through, he has ways to actually clear waves and can be competitively viable. Because you can't be a competitively viable top laner if you can't clear the wave as a tank. Ornn is always viable because he can always clear the wave. It doesn't matter how behind he is, he press QWE, he can clear the wave and move to his team. And for this dash, the controversial part is the invulnerability, right? Or untargetability. So when he's untargetable in his current dash, it has some cool skill expression where you can dodge abilities, right? I think if they made it a directional dash, depending on the rest of his kit, they could choose to make him untargetable until he ends the ability. Like if he comes into contact with a champ, obviously the untargetability ends, right? But if he uses it as just a dash in a direction and is untargetable, it could be seen as too strong, and I wouldn't mind if the untargetability was removed if it's a directional dash. Because then if he's not made untargetable, then he's allowed to be more tanky as an actual tank, right? On to the next ability. The true ability that is holding Maokai back is his sapling toss, his E. As it stands, Maokai throws a sapling that after a delay will chase down nearby enemies, dealing % max HP magic damage. Damage and explosion radius are doubled if it lands in a bush. Now, this is the most toxic ability in Maokai's kit, and one of the most toxic abilities in League, right? It has completely shafted the character into being a support only, build Imperial Mandate, throw out the least interactive trap in the game, and if it hits, it does way too much fucking damage, and if the enemy walks away from it, it does 0 damage. I am so triggered by this ability. Like, I hate that the character has been balanced around this ability alone. Ever since Imperial Mandate was released into the game with the item rework, Maokai instantly went from being a top laner to a support-only character because Riot could not figure out a way to balance Maokai's current kit and make him a top laner that doesn't just run every single support matchup because he has Imperial Mandate. So they're obviously not going to revert the item system, right? They're not going to remove Imperial Mandate. And I've accepted that. A year ago, I was like, please, for the love of God, remove Maokai's interaction with Imperial Mandate. It's killing the character. But here we are. They haven't changed it, and he is still only playable as a Imperial Mandate support that will walk around, throw a sapling in the bush. 30 seconds later, some dumbass will walk into it and take 25% of their health from a level 9 Maokai with Imperial Mandate. It's not fun. So, how would I fix it? Well, I would change it to an ability, right? One of the two. I don't like Maokai being this champ that's a burst mage, like a zoning E mage, right? It's no fun. So instead of being this big damage ability that doubles if you get in the bush, I would have it so Maokai throws a sapling on the ground. It can't move. If an enemy champ comes near it, the sapling explodes, dealing small, very small flat magic damage, leaving a debuff on all champions hit. When Maokai's allies attack a debuff champ, they heal for a percentage of his HP. This heal is applied over 4 seconds. You might remember this ability. It used to be old Shen Q, where Shen would throw a Q at someone. If he autoed them or his ally autoed them, they would heal based off Shen's HP. I really like this ability style because it turns Maokai's E into, again, a supportive teamfight tank. He's there to make his ally strong, not to be the carry himself. If they didn't want to go with that style of a trap that debuffs enemies and heals your team, I would make it so that Maokai tosses a sapling and it explodes when it hits the ground, damaging and slowing enemies and shielding and or healing allies hit, and that he cannot shield or heal himself with this ability. If they wanted to keep his bush superiority thematic, which they currently have, even though I don't think it's very fun, they could add this ability's effects are increased if casted from a bush, right? So I think that the improvements to these abilities, with the first iteration, it makes him a supportive teamfight tank, but the ability doesn't benefit Maokai too much. Well, for the second one at least. But for the first one, I like it a lot. I would be happy with this iteration because it means that Maokai can set up a teamfight objective to be beneficial for his team the way that he currently does, right? So currently, Maokai will set up an objective by putting these nuclear bombs in the bushes, and that's not fun to play against. But he could set up in a different way this time, where he sets up these abilities where if the enemy chases into you, they'll get debuffed, and then your team has opportunity to heal from it, which I think is cool. But the second one is probably the more reliable one for a team fight. I think having this sapling that falls on the ground and then chases after you, it's very iconic, but it's holding the character back. It's just not what Maokai needs. He doesn't need this ability where you throw it down and then it runs after them and it giggles with this high-pitched sapling laugh. It's cute. You know, it's very iconic to the character, but it is making it so that he cannot be changed in a meaningful way. And then after we've gotten away from his most toxic ability, we get to his most boring ability, his ultimate. Let me move my camera out the way of this long text. So right now, Maokai throws out a wave of really fucking slow brambles that will slowly creep towards a direction and root anyone they come into contact with. The problems is that if one of these 5 brambles hits a target, it just disappears, and the rest of their team could just stand in the line and not tank an ability, right? It's designed to be this, oh my god, you need to get out of the way or you're gonna get rooted, but you could have the enemy Ornn just walk in front of it, tank the root for 1 second, and then everyone on the enemy team ignores it. And if it's not used like that, and you try to use it for chase down, they will legit walk away from the ability with tier 1 boots and just not care. It is the most boring ability that I have seen for an ultimate that isn't like Zoe ultimate, right? it just feels bad to use because it's so slow. So how would I fix this? If I wanted to keep this same style of ultimate where it's like this big root, which I think is pretty boring, I would make it sort of like a Nami wave. Nami wave is also kind of a shit ability, but roots I think are better than that tiny knockup that Nami wave does. So I would make it shoot out in a much thinner width and make it much faster. And if you wanted to keep the duration of the root scales with distance, you could keep that. It's fine. But since it's thinner, it's allowed to be faster. And if it hits a champ, it doesn't just disappear. It keeps going through everyone, so your team can't just tank it. I think that would be better. That's a simple way to change it, make it more satisfying to use. But what I would prefer is to revert Maokai's ultimate to Vengeful Maelstrom. Now, if you haven't played since Season 6, or if you didn't play before Season 7, essentially, you've probably never seen this ability. But it was one of the coolest abilities that they've made in League, in my opinion. What was it? It was summon a barrier around yourself that reduces damage taken for all allied champions, including yourself, by 20% is what it used to be. Now, the reason he was reworked to his current state is because this ability was so reliable that if you had Maokai on your team would just take 20% less damage in all team fights. It was pretty broken. But in today's League, there's so much damage in the game that having this team-wide damage reduction wouldn't actually be broken by today's standards, right? You have so many characters that win the game because they have this AoE ult that just shreds through people, or just do so much damage instantly to someone that they just get one shot and your team loses. So I think this ability would actually do really well in today's current League, and I want them to bring it back, but I think they should bring it back in a reworked state. So in the past, it would just reduce 20% damage the entire time. I think that they should make it scaling damage reduction. So the way I have it written out here is that at the start, it would be, the number doesn't matter. I'm just giving an example. 10% damage reduction. And then every second it's active, the damage reduction is increased, right? This makes it so that the enemy team can have counterplay to it. So if they engage and Maokai presses R, he's not just blocking 20% of their damage, he's blocking a smaller amount of their damage. So if he wants to be the one that starts the fight, he has to start it so that his ult can protect his team for more damage. If the enemy team gets the jump on his team and he casts his ult, there is a window of time where the enemy team can punish him for not ulting soon enough, right? I think that is much better for the game. What else did this ability do? It used to store the damage that it tanked, and then at the end of the channel, it would explode, and it would deal more damage based off how much damage he tanked, which is really cool again. Because when he used it in 1v1s, if he used it in a 1v1, it wouldn't deal as much damage as if he was using it in a team fight, because the 1v1 dude couldn't deal enough damage to make it high enough stack. So the ability is also a toggle. It drains mana per second, and I just think they should bring it back. And, you know, I gave you a great message. Come on, Riot, please bring back one of the coolest ults in the game. It was reworked in Season 7 because at the time it was too stifling to the game's teamfight meta, but now we're at a point in League where I think it would fit really well back into the game. So that's what I think Maokai's overall problems are and how I would fix it. I just sort of wanted to make this video because it seems like Riot has ignored Maokai for essentially the past 35 patches, like 2.5 years. It feels like he's been ignored by Riot. Ever since they removed Pulse from Sunfire, he couldn't clear waves. He's been relegated to support. And I just want to play my favorite character again. And I think that he used to be one of the most iconic characters in League. And by keeping him in this state where he can only be played in this really, really confining style of sapling zoning is so bad for the character. And it doesn't do anyone any favors. The people that are playing him are bored by it. And the people that want to play him in top lane and jungle can't because the champ just sucks right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And let me know what you think about my changes to Maokai. If you think they're good, if you have suggestions of your own. And yeah, I'll respond to all the comments on ability changes. And I'll hopefully send this to some, get out in front of some rioters and see what they think. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time.